Well, hello everybody. This is the Stir 716, and this is no other than your special co-host, Mrs. T, aka The Spark. And I have with me, of course, my other co-host, the cool cousin Kim and the dog. We love the dog. It's Tasha. But guess what? This is the month of September, and I am so excited about September. But we do a lot of recognition in September. We do Labor Day. We do it's Constitution Day. We even do Grandparents' Day. We do National Hispanic Day, starts on September the 15th. But let me tell you about one of the most important days that we celebrate in September, and we should celebrate it, and we should honor it, and that is Patriot Day. They also call it the National Day of Service and Remembrance for those who lost their lives during the 2001 September 11th terrorist attacks right here on American soil. I know that for those of us who are old enough to remember, we knew exactly where we were and exactly what we were doing when that news broke. And I know that I will never forget watching everything unfold on TV, and it just seemed to get worse and worse and worse. And how many of you who are listening, who are watching, would believe that the trauma is still with us, even all of this time later, that people are still sick, people are still dying, and people are still suffering from those that effect of that. So that's why this show is so important, and we have such an important special guest with
Yes,
us
we do.
on today. And I know our format looks different to all of our folks that are subscribed. Right now, we're in little squares. Normally, we're in the studio. But guess what? We had to come this way because this person who we're talking to is not in our immediate area, but he is on our immediate minds and in our hearts. It is the Dr. Miles Travis Boyd Jr. And I am so excited that he is with us. Welcome, welcome, welcome to you,
Thank you,
sir.
Lady. Thank you for having me. And
Yes.
congratulations to
Yes.
all three of you.
And he is a special friend of mine, a dear friend of mine for years. I think over 12 years of friendship, over 12
No,
years of.
we're talking like 18.
Oh, my
Ooh.
Lord. They're going to have to give me an AARP card soon because we get old.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
want my I
Yeah.
want my discounts and my Medicare, all that. But yes, this is a very special friend of mine. He was born and raised in Harlem. So yes, this is my fellow New York brother. This is my brother in Christ. This is my brother in the work for health equity, in the work for the social determinants of health, work in the ministry, work in the kingdom. And he's been a very great friend. And our friendship has just grown over the years. And Travis, before I read his bio, you're probably wondering, okay, what's so special about the Dr. Miles Travis Board? Well, he is the victim, right? His mother passed in the 9/11 attack. And ever since I met Travis, he has always had a pure heart. I've never seen Travis angry. I've never seen him bitter, never seen him complaining, always giving, just always a pure heart. And ladies, he is single. Right? Ladies, he
Listen, this
is.
gonna start to be the hookup. The
That's right.
stirs.
Okay. The stir. We
Listen,
stirring it up.
Sharon is looking for a first lady, all right?
Right. The Dr. Miles Travis is looking for a first lady. He is
Yes.
the senior pastor
Senior
at a church in the
pastor.
Bronx. So I'm gonna go ahead and read his bio
Yes.
for you. So Dr. Miles Travis Boyd Jr. is a native of Harlem, New York. He's the son of Miles Nelson Boyd Sr. and the late Elizabeth Holmes. Rooted in faith, education, and a passion for justice, Dr. Boyd has dedicated his life to preaching the gospel, empowering communities, and uplifting future generations. Dr. Boyd is a proud graduate of Virginia Union University, where he earned a Bachelor of Arts in English in 2011. He continued his theological training at the Samuel D. Whit Proctor School of Theology at Virginia Union, earning his Master of Divinity in 2014. In 2021, he received the Doctor of Ministry in Public Theology with a concentration in social justice from Drew University, reflecting his deep commitment to faith in action and prophetic witness. He is currently continuing his education at Virginia Union University Sidney Lewis School of Business, pursuing an Executive Master of Business Administration (EMBA) degree. Throughout his career, Dr. Boyd has seamlessly merged ministry, advocacy, and education. For 14 years, he served as an advanced placement educator, dean, and testing coordinator across several New York City charter schools, impacting the lives of countless college bound scholars. Dr. Boyd is the visionary founder of multiple nonprofit organizations, including the Harlem Ministers and Leadership Conference, M. Travis Boyd Ministries, the Elizabeth Holmes Scholarship Foundation, and the Healing Experience. Each of these initiatives exists to serve as a prophetic beacon of hope, healing, and justice, especially for those on the margins of society. In ministry, Dr. Boyd has faithfully served in a number of leadership roles as director and founder of the Virginia Union University Gospel Choir in Richmond, Virginia, pastor of youth and young adults, and assistant to the pastor at Fourth Baptist Church in Richmond, Virginia, under the mentorship of his spiritual father, Reverend Dr. Emery Berry Jr. Minister of Christian Education at Memorial Baptist Church in Harlem, New York, under the leadership of Reverend Renee Washington Gardner. Dr.
Awesome.
Boyd was licensed to preach on November 10th, 2013. So he is licensed, y'all. He ain't wayward. And
That's it. That's
ordained
it.
into the gospel ministry on April 30th in 2017. Last but not least, on November 24th, 2024, Dr. Boyd was called to serve as the fifth senior pastor of the historic Sharon Baptist Church in the Bronx, New York, a congregation where his leadership, love for the word, and dedication to community transformation are already making a powerful impact. Dr. Boyd is also a proud member of the Inglewood T-Neck Alumni Chapter of Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity Incorporated, where he continues to uphold the fraternity's legacy of achievement in every field of human endeavor and serves as the chapter's chaplain. He lives by the words of Psalm 34 and 1. I will bless the Lord at all times, and his praise shall continually be in my mouth. The scripture captures the spirit of worship, service, and perseverance that continues to define his life in ministry. And how befitting that he lives by Psalm 34:1. Because as I
Yes.
explained, from the time I met Travis, he has always had a spirit of gratitude. He has always blessed the Lord, always had a praise on his tongue. And he's always been able to walk with the elite, but have a common touch because he is the godson of the Reverend Al
Yes,
Sharpton. So,
Reverend
Yeah.
Al
yes, Travis,
Sharpton. Love
welcome.
that.
Thank you for your yes
Thank
and
you.
talk to
Thank
us,
you.
brother.
Listen, you might want to go get licensed to preach the way you over here reading this bio.
Right, the bio.
Somebody gonna get saved on this show.
Introduction.
No, ladies, thank you so much for having me. It is an
Oh,
honor,
it's
a privilege
amazing.
just to be here, to just share with you. I've heard so many great things about all three of you, this podcast and what you're doing. I'm just
Thank you.
excited
you.
to where you all are going. There's this scripture that says, "Eyes have not seen, ears have not heard, neither has it entered the heart."
Hey.
The great things God has in store for you. And I'm just excited because I have not seen it. We have not seen it. We have not heard it, but we know that God's going to do some great things. So I'm just excited.
Amen.
And I
Thank you.
appreciate the
Amen.
opportunity of just being here. So thank you.
Amen.
We receive
Amen.
that.
Thank
Wonderful.
you.
So,
And I think that your bio truly is a testament of resilience. I know
Yes.
sometimes people go through things, even as children, and we carry such heavy burdens with us, even into our adulthood when things happen to us. So, just as a first question, I hope I'm not like jumping ahead with anybody else's questions, but help somebody out there and help us. For those of us who have had a traumatic event at a young age, and I know you'll talk a little bit more about September 11th and your mom and kind of like what you were going through, but how did you? I mean, Kim just listed things, I mean, that people can only dream of doing in a lifetime. You have done it. You're still a young man. How did you what was it that brought you through, and was that perseverance? And we know it was your faith in God, but what does that intrinsic thing sound like, look like, and feel like for those of us who are stuck because we had something happen to us in our past?
I can't say that I had to figure this out along that
Mm,
journey. I think it's something that I knew
mm,
before the journey happened. One thing about my mother, she kept me in private school, and this wasn't a regular private school. I've been in a private Christian school my entire life. So church was literally the foundation. My faith was literally the foundation as to why I guess I'm so resilient, or what we call resilience. I want to say that between my church family, and just having a really good sounding board, a really good village.
mm,
I think it's when my mom passed, I figured out what it meant to have this thing that we call having a good village, or it takes a village to raise a child, right? It
Yes.
really, really did. It took a village of people to really raise me, to cultivate me. Now listen, I wasn't like the best kid in the world, you know. I had my issues, it's the growing pains of a teenager, you know. But everyone was patient with me, and I think that's what it is that we have to learn how to be patient, especially with kids, right? As a former educator, for 14 years, it took me about, out of the 14 years, it took me about 4 or 5 years to figure out that the struggle wasn't the kids, the struggle was me, because I wasn't being patient with the kids.
Wow.
And so I had to learn kids are going to always be kids, whatever school you go to, wherever you go, niece, nephew, they're going to all be kids. It's how you handle these kids, in the process, because someone had to handle me, a certain kind of way.
Right.
So I really do believe it's that village that really just was just like a big camaraderie around me that helped me, to push me. No one ever tried to force their dreams on me. People let me figure it out on my own.
Okay.
And then I was also taught how to hear from God too.
Yeah.
That definitely was, a big thing. And most kids don't know that, they'll think it's their
Right.
voice, or, it's them. And I mean, for years, up until some years ago, I had to figure out like, what was that thing that was holding me and teaching me. And it was really the voice of God. Right. Someone asked me the other day, they said, how do you know the difference between, or how do you know when God's talking to you? Is it audible? And I said, sometimes it's not audible. I said, people have the different moments and opportunities where God speaks to them. I said, I know my formative years, God speaking to me was in the place of how my aunts treated me and how they loved me, how they cared for me.
That's powerful.
It was the God in them that showed me that God was real. It was people like Latoya, people like my friend Natasha that I met out in Virginia.
Now he know me for real, because he just called me Latoya. You understand? And here's something powerful about that. Even as we talk about God speaking to us,
Right.
when someone calls me Latoya, I know that they know me in a deep way. We have a personal relationship. If you call me Kim, you met me at a point in my life that makes me know that you don't know me during the struggle. And it's the same thing with God. When we call him Jehovah Jireh, when we call him our provider, or when we call him Jehovah Nisi, a banner over us, you've experienced him being a banner over you.
That's right.
Versus just a regular name that you could call him. So I just wanted to have a little church moment with
Let me just say this to y'all. I know Latoya, and there was some struggling years because she tried to kill me one night. We were in the car, okay? I'm not going to tell that story right now, but I just want y'all to know we've had our moments. And it was we were just silly. We were kids who really loved each other, who really cared about you. We had like this thing in common. We both were from New York, right? And we both were church kids, and we both were trying to figure out life. And when you saw her, you saw me. When you saw me, you saw her. So,
this still my best friend. It's my best friend. And days, months could go by without calling. And as soon as I pick up, Latoya, what you want? Even with the podcast, I was like, listen, we need you. We want you to come on. 9/11 is coming up, and we would love to have you here. So, yep. But Travis, you mentioned something powerful before I asked my question, that kids, you had to learn that the problem wasn't the kids. The problem was you not being patient with them, right? And that kids will be kids no matter who they are or where they are. And that's something very powerful for anyone in the education system listening, especially when you look at the racial dynamic and the systemic racism within schools with kids, and just seeing that the trauma that you even experienced, right, with as you go into it is very powerful as you begin to tell your story, not knowing where your mom was leading up to days after it, coming home, not knowing what happened to your mom. And then you look at the traumas that happen to other African American kids, whether they're experiencing a divorce in the home or whether they experience abuse in the home, and they're not given the same grace, the same empathy, right? The same post-traumatic stress disorder that are often attributed or given to our counterparts or white children. And so we realize that even in the education system, what we may call oppositional defiant disorder, what we may call ADHD, what we may call a learning disability is straight out trauma. And it's incumbent upon the teachers to now be patient with those children. So with that being said, Travis, take us back to that day. Take us back to 12. Was it 12-year-old Travis?
12 years old. 12 years
Take us
old.
back to 12-year-old Travis. What that day looked like for you when you woke up that morning, when you went to school, down to that evening, and walk us through to Dr. Miles Travis Boy today.
Absolutely. I think Tasha made a great point. It's a day that we would never forget, right? We all knew where we were, what we were doing, how the day kind of orchestrated. Um, I'll say this. I spoke to my mom. I saw my mom that Sunday before, um, and I spoke to her that Monday. Um, so to lead up to like the context as to why I was where I was. So every summer, my mom would send me down south with my aunts and my cousins. And then when I would come back at the end of August, I would go to my aunt's house downtown, my aunt Vivian. Her son and her daughter were all around the same age. And because we were in Christian school, we in private school, we started like 2 weeks later than regular public school. So I was determined to, stay close with my cousins, for as long as I possibly could until I couldn't anymore. Until I had to go home, of course. But I'll never forget, I was laying on the couch that day. And I was asleep on my aunt's couch downtown, and my uncle yelled from the back room, Trav, wake up. And I'm like, what's up? And he was like, call your mother. He said something happened with the towers downtown. Call your mother. So I immediately turned the TV on. I see like all this chaos just downtown. It's just like people just running. There's smoke everywhere. So I pick up the phone. I never forget the number. It was 212-724-2478, right? And the reason why I knew this number so well, because I was always calling my mother, right? Or 212-724-7444 was her boss's number. I know how to get in touch with my mother. So if I didn't get to her, I called her boss. I called, her supervisor, whatever the case is. So I called the numbers, lines were busy. I kept calling. So I said, it's not the phone's not answering, I don't know what's going on, it's busy. So we turned the TV, then the second plane hits the second tower. Which was ironic. My mother was in the second tower on the 84th floor. And anyone has done any history on the tower and in the placement in which it was hit, it was hit between the 79th and 84th floor. And so, I'm confused, but, I didn't think nothing of it. I knew that when the towers were bombed in the 90s, my mother worked there. I was in, I believe, kindergarten or first grade. She picked me up, took me home. It was an awkward day because she was very silent, but I also realized too, she was trying to process what she had gone through. So I figured the same thing was going to happen. She would, come uptown, or you should go home. We see her there, and, it was all good. But my uncle took me and my cousin Marcus to the roof. And we lived on the corner of 61st and Amsterdam in the projects. Well, that's where my aunt had the apartment at. And went uptown, and it seemed like out of nowhere it was standstill traffic, and it was like a rush of people just walking. And it felt so awkward and weird because although the noise was like the horns were honking really loud, it was quiet.
Wow.
It was really quiet, and I'm like, what's going on? So this other guy comes up on the roof, and the guy's like, oh, it must be a terrorist attack. And so I looked at my cousin Marcus. I'm like, yo, what's a terrorist attack? And he was like, it's when people kill themselves for what they believe, or kill to hurt other people, basically. And I was just like, oh, wow, I never heard of that before. So, I at 12, you don't know, all I know is mom's coming home.
Right.
So my uncle, he takes us to go get some, I don't know if y'all remember the Blimpies.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
They had that in Buffalo, but I sure do remember Blimpies.
I remember.
Yeah. So he took us to Blimpies, and we ate or whatever the case is. We came back upstairs. Still no communication, right? The towers had fallen.
Okay.
It's played all over the news. So my uncle's like, well, let's go downstairs and wait for your aunt to come home. We're downstairs on the corner. Now at this point, there's a massive amount of people coming up Amsterdam Avenue. And this time it seems like they go from being like clean to dirty.
And not to
Mm.
cut you off, Travis, a lot of people don't know that Harlem is Manhattan. So for those of
Harlem
y'all
is
listening,
Manhattan.
when he's saying downtown, uptown, it's because that's Manhattan. When you hit a
Right.
certain part, they call it Harlem. Then you
Right.
hit a
Right.
certain
Well,
part, it's Manhattan.
the funny thing is, my aunt lived in across the street from Lincoln Center on 61st Street.
Mhm.
So, but we still, my mom and I lived in Harlem. So I was closer downtown to my mom than I was, home.
Mm-hmm.
And I never forget my aunt. I turned to the right, and my aunt's walking up the block. My aunt Vivian, and she's covered in all this soot. It's like
Mm.
a white ghost just walking up the street, and she's just crying and crying. I'm like, whoa, there go Auntie Vivian. And she sits in the we see her walk and sit in the back. And some uncle's like, Vivian, what's up? Like, what happened? And she's like, I don't want to go up to upstairs. They're gonna bomb the building, they're gonna bomb the buildings. She says all the buildings get bombed in New York City. So she says, my uncle says, Vivian, what are you talking about? Like, come on, let's go upstairs. So we sat to get her calm. And she said, all I could think of was my sister. I don't know where my sister is. She says, I went to go
Mm.
look for her. She says, but the people wouldn't let me. So my aunt tells a story how she when she saw the tower, or the plane goes in the first tower, my mom calls her. And my mom says that, yelling like, Vivian, these people, this plane with this tower there, the people are falling out the building, they're jumping. Like, what do I do? So my aunt was like, get your things and leave.
Mm-hmm.
My godmother, who worked with my mother on the same floor, tells the story how my mother went from one side of the building to the next to go get her, and said, Esselyn, let's go. We gotta get out of here. And when they walked to the staircase, Esselyn says that my mother says to her, hey, I have to go to my desk and get my purse. I'll meet you downstairs.
Mm.
My aunt Essence said she got to the 79th floor. She said it was the most gruesome thing she had ever seen. She said that people were in the elevator. They had went to the bathroom on themselves. People were throwing up. People were passing out, having heart attacks. They were hyperventilating. She says as they were coming up, the police officers and the firemen were going up, and they kept saying, "Oh, everything is fine. Just go back to your office." People were going back in the building.
Wow.
Because no one thought that this second plane would
Right.
fall the way,
Mm-hmm.
or hit the way it did,
Right.
or hit regardless. And my aunt Esther said when she got to the 79th floor, and anyone who knows anything about the World Trade Center, you can only take one elevator to one floor, and you had to walk over and then take it up
To the next floors. Yeah.
Correct. So she got to the 79th floor, took the elevator down. She says by the time she got to the third floor, she heard the cable snap, and they dropped from the third floor to the first floor. She said
Now pause. People wonder why us people from New York don't mess with
I don't mess with
elevators. We
elevators.
don't bang with elevators. I will walk to heaven.
Yeah. Not I'm walking to heaven.
Oh my goodness.
But it's a fact. Like not elevators is not something we play on. I remember we used to jump on the elevators and they would get stuck. It's nothing that we play with, right? So my aunt Esther said they dropped. She said the few of them were hurt because there was a few of them in there. She said, but what saved her life was this man had a crutch. He was on crutches. And she said he pried the door open and someone helped him out of the elevator. She said, and when she walked out of the building to go outside, she noticed that the building was falling behind her. And she said all she had to do, she said she ran for her life. And she said, oh my God, Liz is still upstairs. And it's probably a guilt that she walks around with every day. Knowing that her best friend, that she left her best friend, upstairs. It wasn't her fault, Right. But anyone knows a Black woman, she don't leave her purse nowhere.
Yeah.
Right.
Her whole life is in her purse, her keys, her social security card, everything, my medical cards, everything was in the purse, home, everything was there. So my aunt, to fast track my aunt, we get her upstairs or what have you. And my aunt said, I spoke to Liz, I told her to get out the building, so my uncle says, well, we know Liz is a fighter, she got out on her way home. So we called, no answer. So we figured, she might have been stuck, either in traffic or might have gotten injured, at the hospital. So we said, we'll wait till the morning and give her a call. Maybe, she went home, and she showered, went to sleep. Anyone who knows my mother knew that my mother was a beautiful woman, just weird, okay? My mother was the type, she would eat the Quaker oats out of the container with a cup, and she would eat the dry oats just like that, watching the news, right? And I'm like, Mom, what is this? And then, I learned that, Black women suffer from anemia and different things. So it was a way for her, to deal with that or whatever.
Pica.
Huh?
Pica. Eating
Pica?
ice, oatmeal, starch.
Yeah. So we figured, she might have been asleep, took a shower, went home, or whatever the case is. So the next morning we called, no answer. So we went uptown, and the apartment was the most airiest feeling I had ever felt in my life. It just
So uptown, your house, you and your mom's
uptown in Harlem.
apartment. Okay.
Wow.
It was the most airiest feeling in the world. It didn't even feel like home. It was weird. And you could just tell something was off. My great aunt called from South Carolina. She next month, in 2 months, she'll turn 95. But she called and she said, if Liz doesn't come home tonight, that means she's not alive.
Wow.
He said, why would you say that? And she says, I know what the spirit is telling me.
Wow.
And so we canvassed the block. We asked the people, on the block. Because my church that I grew up in, Canaan Baptist, the church was right across the street from where we lived. And everyone knew who we were on the block. It was like, there's no secret of that. So we asked the lady in the laundromat, we asked Miss Arthurina, who the florist, we asked the African who owns a clothing store. He's made clothes for my mom. And everyone said, yeah, we saw her yesterday morning. She had this on. It was like, I guess, a green dress, whatever the case is. But that we haven't seen her. So from those little details from people, we then created a poster with a picture on it. And, said, this is what she looks like. She has a scar here. Have you seen her with the cases? I think that's when it kind of got real. But as a kid, I was holding on to hope. I didn't think that my mother was dead. It didn't seem like my mother. And as a single mother, as the only child, there's this thing with us Black boys where our mothers are like our heroes. She's Superwoman. She can't, nothing happened to her. She's invincible. And that's what I thought in my head. Like, my mother was invincible. My mother was stern. And it's probably why I got straight A's all through school or whatever the case was. But she was the type of mother that would make me sit at the kitchen table and read every single night for an hour. I couldn't do homework in my room. I had to do homework at the table. And not just read, but I had to read out loud to her. So it was like there was a standard that was here, right? And now the standard is disrupted. This and I have such mixed emotions because when we get back downtown to my aunt's house, the entire night of September 11th and nights after September 11th, I sat in front of the TV and watched them replay it and replay it. I watched them pull people out of trouble thinking that it was my mother or hoping that it was my mother. My godmother, Kathy Sharpton, said to my aunt, she says, I think while you guys are in search for Liz, I think Travis should come to Brooklyn and stay with us. Now, let me backtrack just a little bit. The very next day after September 11th, my dad, 2 days after September 11th, my dad, we all were uptown at my mom's house. My dad comes. I hadn't seen my dad in a while, and I don't know if my dad knew how to be a father to me because his father was never really a father to him, right? And these are things that I had to learn as I got into my 30s about our parents and trauma, right? And why they respond the way they do, right? And not being able to hold them accountable for the tools and resources that they never had or were never taught to have. Right. And I think we would do so much better as adults with our trauma if we would stop blaming them for what they did not know.
Right.
That's good.
So, it's a reality.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a reality. And so I saw him when I was like, hey dad, what's up? He was like, I think it's just best. I was sitting and talking to your aunts that you should stay with them. This is your comfort zone. You're around them all the time. And we'll just, figure it out from there. So I went from trauma from September 11th with my mom to September 14th to my dad now filing custody for me, full custody for me after telling me that.
Wow.
You
So
think he did that? Well, they didn't announce yet. And we'll get into that later.
no one
But he
knew
knew he would
anything
get
about
money
no
for you?
money. No, no one knew nothing about money, right?
Okay.
Because in our heads, we were still hopeful that she was here, she was alive.
Yeah, and the victim compensation fund didn't come until
that didn't come to like way
later.
after. The conversations of that didn't come like till a year later, whatever the case is. And it was just like, what do you mean? Like it's cool, but whatever. I was in Brooklyn. I ended up going to Brooklyn with Reverend Sharpton and my godmother. Now here it is. I want to make this disclaimer because people think that the Sharptons were my saviors or my saving grace in this moment. Not realizing that this woman was a part of my life. Kathy Sharpton was part of my life way before my mother passed away.
Right.
Years.
Tell the truth, shame the devil. Come on.
Yeah, seriously, she's the one who introduced me to the arts. She's the one who took me to my first play on Broadway. She was the one who introduced me to Ashford and Simpson. She brought me around these people. She's always been the most amazing woman I've ever met because she shares her platform with people. And it doesn't become selfish for herself, right? And I think that's why I get part of my giving is really from her because she exposed me to so much, and she gave so much. So I stayed with her every day. The phone would ring. I thought it was my mom. It wasn't. Watched the news thinking that and she didn't. I don't even think she knew how to be there for me outside of just saying, "We're gonna find the Travis. It's gonna be all right."
Right.
She saw the hope and glimmer in my eye, and I often think about. I never really asked her this. Maybe I should, but she has 2 daughters, but she never had a son, and I don't know if I can just imagine, and I kind of watched her heart break for me. Because of what I was going through, right? It's the difference between being 6 and 7 years old, and processing the death of a parent differently than at 12 years old, where you're a little more developed.
Right.
And this is like the transformation of your life.
Yeah.
So we went weeks. And then about a few weeks later, I'll get a call from this hospital in New Jersey. And the hospital says to us, hey, we found Elizabeth Holmes.
Oh my goodness.
Wow. We're going to pause right here, but the story is far from over. In our next episode, Dr. Boyd takes us even deeper, opening up about the call that changed his life forever. You don't want to miss it. Join us, the Stir 716, for part 2 of this powerful conversation.